It's Wednesday, September 27th, 2017, and this is Seaside Chats with Kenneth Arthur, and that's me, Kenneth Arthur, where every week I sit down with a comedian and talk about their favorite NFL team, usually the team that's playing the Seattle Seahawks. So far, in this first season of doing Seaside Chats in this format of the podcast, you're not always going to find a Titans fan, but, with certain teams, it's a little easier than others, and, we're just expanding that search out, and with the Indianapolis Colts, it's maybe a little bit easier to find fans because if you have the biggest football player in the world, not physically speaking, but metaphorically speaking, then you're going to have more fans, but also, people that grew up in Indianapolis. So that's what we have this week with Charlie Lind, an improviser, comedian, actor here in Los Angeles.
Hey.
Going to talk about the Colts. Charlie, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Kenneth. Yeah, it's nice being here.
I've had it's interesting now because I've had my run-ins with Colts fans over the years, especially since 2012. And the reason for that is that I have talked more shit about Andrew Luck than perhaps most. I definitely, in writing, I've written articles, excuse me. I've written articles on field goals. I've written articles on some of the other sites, Sports on Earth, Rolling Stone, that I've had to point out for one reason or another, and that Andrew Luck was being overrated. And so I pushed that narrative as much as anyone. And some of that has to do with the fact that as a Seahawks fan, you get to comparing Russell Wilson and Andrew Luck because they were drafted 74 spots apart. But I also think that as 5 years has passed, I've also come around full circle and seen that Andrew Luck, now that he's going through some injury issues and the franchise I can still go back and reflect and think, well, he's clearly the entire team. He's a great player. I just don't think he's a top 5 quarterback. What's it been like for you as a Colts fan as we're headed into this game, Sunday Night Football, as we're headed into this game and Andrew Luck isn't playing and he hasn't played for any of these last 2 months for preseason and regular season? What's it been like for you as a Colts fan, the frustration and the anticipation of Andrew Luck and his return?
I mean, it's a lot of things. I mean, it's hell. Part of it is just, it's like we're going through this very weird time that we've really been going through this whole time, but we've been so lucky to have somebody like Peyton Manning. And we've been so lucky to have, Andrew Luck, and then that luck's running out. It really is. I'm glad he's not playing this Sunday. It would be a really bad time to come back, just because our offensive line it's not there. It's not even close to being there. And I worry about his safety. And I worry about to what he is now. I kind of wonder, what kind of quarterback is he when he comes back? I've heard some rumors that he is done for ever, and that's really scary because that's all we have.
Where do those rumors sort of circulate from or emanate from? Do you feel like it's all just sort of talk, or do you feel like that they are credible enough to really worry?
It's a lot of talk, but it's a lot of you just kind of watch. You kind of watch these games where the Colts are in, and you're just kind of like, what are we doing? What have we been doing? And we did a good job, I think, getting rid of Grigson. And I like to think that the problem was Grigson. I like to think that the problem is Chuck Pagano. But when it comes down to it, I think it comes down to Jim Irsay and just the history we have with him and who he is as a team owner. And,
yeah.
I mean, I don't want to take it off of Andrew Luck, but I
think that's fair. I mean, I think that it's funny because even it's not just lining up 2012 with Andrew Luck. That's also lining up with Ryan Grigson, and him winning Executive of the Year that first year pissed off a lot of Seahawks fans because we felt that it was a clear indication that the best Executive of the Year was John Schneider, because the Seahawks, they weren't picking first overall. They didn't have that luxury, and it was kind of I think it seemed like they had done more with nothing. Now, getting upset over an award that nobody knows about, who cares? But I certainly always think that there was plenty of disdain, or at least are you guys kidding me? Are you looking at Ryan Grigson? He sucks. And like that kind of thing.
Well, they know now. I mean, I think in hindsight, you're like, well, you do a couple of drafts where you're just drafting wide receivers and like goes nowhere, and you don't have a front line, and everyone's wondering what the hell's going on. And then you kind of wonder to yourself. I mean, this is like the rumors that I know that I heard circulating or whatever, that the NFL made Jim Irsay hire Bill Polian back in the day when he was in trouble with like drugs or alcohol or things like that. And then Bill Polian took full control of the Colts. And so he kind of had the idea of what was going on. And Bill Polian, you know, is known as he was known for being a pretty good GM. I mean, he won a Super Bowl for the Colts. And we also had Peyton Manning, and also Peyton Manning ran the show for the most part, especially offensively. And then you hear like Jim Irsay fires Bill Polian because he wants his team back, things like that, words like that, where it's like, oh, you mean you wanted a guy who never grew up knowing about football, never played football, wants to get his team back just because his dad owned the team and now he owns the team.
Do you think that Ryan Grigson is like the ultimate owner fan, like the person that is calling? Yeah, you know, if somebody that was calling in the local radio station to give their shitty opinions about the team was the owner of a team, that's what it is.
Well, I heard like players saying that he walked around like he invented football, and I think he was hired by Jim Irsay just because Jim Irsay could control him, because he was a beginner. Yeah. Like he didn't hire a guy who had already been a GM other places. He hired a dude who's just like new to being a GM, was like, you know, now I can control this guy, and I want wide receivers because that's football, and we got the greatest quarterback in the NFL or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He doesn't understand what it really takes to have a good football team.
Yeah, I mean, that's the nice thing too about, I mean, and just, I can only speak from, I mean, for one, I think it's interesting how for no reason at all, people don't put enough on owners, and they really think the owners do a great job, and the league does a great job of hiding the owners behind the Wizard of Oz curtain and saying, don't look at this guy, look at these guys, the guys that are getting fired, the guys that, you know, let's blame the coach. Let's blame the quarterback, or like, then let's blame the coach, then let's blame the GM. And it's like, the only person that's in control of all of this stuff is the owner. And it's like, why do franchises like the Cleveland Browns suck for so long? Why do the Rams suck for so long? You know, even like when the Rams luck out to a championship in '99, I mean, clearly you can look and say Stan Kroenke is a terrible owner. Jed York is a terrible owner. The Haslams are terrible owners. The people that owned the Bills for so long are terrible owners for, you know, that they, even Al Davis, and you see like when Al Davis passes away and it gets handed over to Mark Davis, maybe Mark Davis isn't a terrible owner. They start to do better, and these owner changes do make changes. Is there any thought or talk of, you know, when is Jim Irsay going to get bought out, or it's most likely he's a lifer?
Well, I mean, there's talks of the possibility that Jim Irsay really wants Peyton Manning to come and be the GM or have something to do with the Colts, and I don't think. I think the only way that Peyton Manning would want to do that is if he had some ownership of the Colts, because it's easier when you're an outsider looking in. Well, I'm not inside of it, but I'm sure Peyton Manning sees it on the outside and is like, yeah, this dude has no business running a team.
Yeah.
I mean, if you see pictures of him, you're just kind of like, what? This guy's like, he's just a rich kid who grew up, and now he didn't do anything. He just is a rich kid.
It's certainly funny. I mean, speaking of comedy, it's funny.
Yeah, I'm sure other teams love it. I mean, you guys, I'm sure your defense, Seattle's defense is just like licking their lips for this Sunday. I mean, I certainly would be.
It's going to be Sunday Night Football, so you know they're going to be licking their lips for those fishes that are thrown at Pike Place Market. I mean,
yeah,
fishes.
All the B-roll. Yeah, love it.
Yeah. Get ready for that B-roll this Sunday night, NBC, B-roll action, throwing fishes, Space Needle. You know, the only things you need to know about the city of Seattle, not much else is
yeah, nothing else.
That's a good transition to home cities and growing up and the things that we become used to with our NFL teams. So where were you born, and how is that in relation to Indianapolis? Or, if it's within Indianapolis, tell me a little bit about like the neighborhood in conjunction with the stadium or something like that. And what was your first memory of being a Colts fan?
I was born in Beech Grove, Indiana, and I lived on the south side of Indianapolis. Beech Grove is a small, like, bureau or whatever, like, little town of Indianapolis. And it was, I think it started with Amtrak. There's like an Amtrak facility there that they work on trains or something. And so that's where it all like started. And so around those people are like, I don't know, people who would work on trains for the most part. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, it's a little, every time I go back to the south side of Indianapolis, I put on like my Southern accent, and I don't think you should have a Southern accent being in Beech Grove or like Indianapolis, but you do. We kind of have this draw. And so I'll get like talking to my dad, and all of a sudden, he'll be talking like this, and I'll be like potato salad or whatever. We like get into this weird short form Southern accent that's really odd, but like everyone has it. And it's different from the north side of Indy. It's, some people call it Beach Tucky because it's just like, it's kind of hillbilly area a little bit. You can see some like famous fights online at Walmarts in Beech Grove. Uh-huh. There's like two moms fighting in front of their kid. It's pretty nice.
And when was your first memory of like the Colts?
Yeah, I mean, you just grow up. I think my first memory of the Colts just being like really young and kind of seeing the Colts play the Patriots like at Christmas, like during Christmas and stuff. But we weren't really a good team until I do remember like Peyton Manning's, not his first year because he was like god awful, or like the team itself was god awful, but he was really good. And then like seeing him progress, and then obviously like basically my Colts, being young and being a Colts fan has everything to do with obviously Peyton Manning.
Yeah. So like what year would you say, were you there with Peyton Manning in the early years, or what, how does that line up?
Yeah. So I was there, I'd say his second year. What was that, like 99?
Uh-huh.
So we were already on the like Colts. Everybody was on the Colts bandwagon. The guy made Indianapolis a football city. It was a basketball city. He made it a football city.
Yeah. So then with those first couple years, there was the narrative of Peyton Manning is the best football player in the NFL, if not the best quarterback of all time. I'm not going to say it took forever to win a Super Bowl, but it did feel, when you have a player that good, it does feel like a long stretch, especially since I don't think he won a playoff game until 2003, which was, 6 years into his career. He didn't get to the Super Bowl, but they did win it in, 2006. Do you remember sort of the feeling of disappointment at the playoffs, or were people just sort of happy to have him?
I don't know if you remember, but like we would have amazing seasons of like 3-4 losses where we were like, oh, this is the year again, here we go. And then like first game of the playoffs, it'd be like 40-0 to the Jets. And we'd be like, what? Why, why are we losing these games we definitely shouldn't be losing.
Huh.
And so that was really odd. And then obviously, growing up, you're a homer for Peyton Manning when people talk Peyton Manning and Tom Brady and things like that. So you're always like, yeah, Tom Brady's there's no way Tom Brady's better than Peyton Manning. Now I don't think that anymore, obviously, but there was a time when I definitely thought Peyton Manning was a better player than Tom Brady when it comes to being a quarterback.
How many times do you think the Colts would have won the Super Bowl if Bob Sanders was never injured?
I don't know. I think I think the Colts would have won a lot more Super Bowls if maybe possibly, and I'll say it again, Jim Irsay wasn't the owner. If they had an owner that stepped back and like let the team be the team. I mean, why Peyton Manning's a god in Indianapolis. Uh-huh. why don't you think he's already back there yet?
That's interesting.
Yeah, what's keeping him from Indianapolis?
There was even rumors in the last year of him becoming an owner or a GM or in the John Elway role for the LA Rams. So
Really,
a team that he's never been associated with.
Like Tennessee Titans. I heard that.
Right. Then which also at least he went to college or at Tennessee, but it's like he's there's no and especially because he's a god there and he spent so much time there, and when he goes down in history in Canton and all that kind of stuff, it'll be as a Colt and changing the franchise around from the one that was not successful since Johnny Unitas in 1970. It is interesting to think about it that way. Who are some of your other favorite players during that Peyton Manning era?
I liked Edgerrin James. I like Edgerrin James, Jeff Saturday.
And I feel like Jeff Saturday, didn't he play for like 50 years or something?
Yeah, about 50 years. Yeah. He played for a long time. I think he ended up being able to retire as a Colt. They signed him on a one-day contract a couple years back or something like that. He played for Green Bay.
99, so he came in that year, Peyton Manning's second year, like you were talking about before, 99, left in 2011, spent 1 year with the Packers, went to the Pro Bowl, and then, must have retired with a one-day contract.
Yeah, and then obviously Reggie Wayne.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, Robert Mathis, Dwight Freeney, Dallas Clark.
Yeah. Those are, Mathis and Freeney seem like underrated players in some respect because, there's those, if they had been maybe on a team, I don't know, if they had been on their own teams or if they had maybe been on teams that weren't considered to have such bad defenses most of the part, maybe they would have been seen in a better light. Or, I think that they're giving a ton of respect, especially Freeney. But do you think that they were even, that they were even better than that, like, semi Hall of Fame level?
Yeah, I mean, oh man, they were really, they were loved definitely in Indianapolis. That city, when the Colts are really good, man, they bleed blue. It's just like everything is blue there. It is crazy. So I don't know. It's hard to say if where they would be in a different role. I know in the role that they were in or where they were at, they were really well liked. People have mad respect for them. The Colt, they're all, in my eyes, they'll always be a Colt.
Any thoughts to the idea that Peyton Manning was not a good playoffs quarterback?
No. No. You see games where I definitely have seen some games in the playoffs where he was just like amazing.
Yeah.
He's some games in the playoff where you're like, what the hell happened? But I can't really think of a time when I thought that Peyton Manning definitely lost, except for in the Super Bowl. He lost the game for everyone. In the Super Bowl with the Seattle Seahawks. Right. I forget what year that was.
2013. We'll never forget.
Yeah, I'm sure you won't. And that was one game where I was like, oh boy, he is not playing well. That had a lot to do with Seattle's defense too.
Yeah. Is there a game with the Colts that stands out to you when I say what game hurts the most?
Hurts?
Yeah.
God, just about every Colts and Patriots playoff game you can think of, because I think maybe we beat them one time in the playoff. I don't even want to know what the record is for the Colts versus the Patriots in the playoffs, but it's pretty bad.
Yeah, those were the ones, and those are definitely the ones that stand out to people. So after 2008, when Dungy leaves and Jim Caldwell takes over, and you guys go to the Super Bowl in 2009, lose to the New Orleans Saints, and then 2 years later, Jim Caldwell is fired without Peyton Manning being there. How did you feel about that transition?
I think it was just people trying to cover just cover tracks, man. I don't know. We were kind of excited because we knew Andrew Luck was coming in. We kind of didn't know what was going on. I think the Colts went like 2-16 or something like that, and whatever. I don't even know.
2-14, close. They didn't add 2 more games. They had two. Yeah. They had to just add 2 more losses.
They had 2 more games. Yeah. But yeah, that year it was like, ugh, this is just the Colts. You know, this is. But Peyton's hurt. He's going to come back. Everything will be fine. It was weird when we got rid of him, though. It was weird when we sent him away because I just don't think you do something like that, even thinking that Andrew Luck is what he is. You don't get rid of – what do they say, like, you know, 2 in the bush, something like – I don't know. 2 in the bush, 1 in the basket. I don't know what that means.
Sounds like I'm not sure. Well, man, we might have to edit that out later. It sounds a little bit risque.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, I don't know, but they're just like, oh yeah, Andrew Luck, he's this great guy. We're going to go all the way with him. And you're like, no, you shouldn't though, because you still got Peyton Manning, who's like considerably top 5 greatest quarterbacks of all time. So why are we going to let him go?
Yeah.
No matter what. And they're like, well, it frees up some money so that we can, and you're like, no, who cares? They'll figure it out. People want to play Peyton Manning. People don't know who Andrew Luck is.
Was that so after that first season when, you know, they do go from 2-14 to 11-5, go to the playoffs, Andrew Luck is like, everybody loves him. He's comeback king. Was that easy enough for people to forget about Peyton Manning?
Yeah, I mean, at that time, you're just like, wow, we are so lucky. We grew up with Peyton Manning, and now we have Andrew Luck. We're like Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, and so everybody's like high-fiving, and we're thinking it's great. And then at that same time, Chuck Pagano has leukemia, and he's out. Mm-hmm. Right? Is that year?
It is.
Yeah. So he's out, and then Cardinals coach
Bruce Arians.
Yeah, Bruce Arians. He takes over, and we're like, all right, here we go. You know, this is the beginning of a new era of Colts football, and that's not what happens.
Yeah. Were there many points in the like I said, I haven't been super on the Luck bandwagon because I felt like there were a lot of, you know, interceptions and that he may be one of the 5 most talented players in the NFL, but there was, you know, from a physical standpoint, even from a mental standpoint, but I felt like sometimes the results were just less than desirable, and that a lot of the comebacks and stuff were created by first half interceptions, and that there was just a guy in this position, you know, in Luck's body who, like, you know, there was definitely the guy there that you could say is going to be as good as Peyton Manning in the right system. You know, the Colts shuffled through offensive coordinators. They couldn't get their stories straight on what they wanted Andrew Luck to be. It felt like they were constantly changing it up, and they, you know, and I think it's an underrated factor in the Peyton Manning era. I think was like, you know, having Edgerrin James and Joseph Adai and Reggie Wayne and Marvin Harrison, which was just having stable guys around him. And with Andrew Luck, you know, it's been Vic Ballard or Trent Richardson, or, you know, now it's Frank Gore, who's just like a very solid player, but, you know, definitely not like, you know, not young. And he's had T.Y. Hilton, but like you said, they draft first round receivers. So it just felt like, and I wrote an article a couple months ago regarding this exact situation, which is that no matter what, the Colts are fucking over Andrew Luck. And even when people would say he's an elite quarterback or he's a top 5 quarterback, it was just upsetting because I would say, yeah, he could be, but he's not. And that, if anything, that should just upset you because the results aren't what they should be given how talented he is. Did you feel that in the last 5 years? Have you felt that? Or
yeah, but I think we make excuses and we think I mean, especially as a Colts fan, and I sit, you know, I watch games with my good friend here in LA every Sunday, who's just like a crazy Colts fan, like one of those guys who if they lose, he's going to have a bad day, and you know it, and you just kind of like stay away from him, be quiet. And you also know the Colts are going to lose. So you're like, man, I'm just going to see this guy like break down.
Yeah.
And with Andrew Luck, we just kind of like sweep it under this like, well, he doesn't have an offensive line rug. You know what I mean? Like, well, he doesn't have an offensive line, so he has to make quicker decisions, and that's why he's throwing these interceptions. And we've seen him when he's really good, and man, he's amazing. And man, remember that game against Kansas City where he came back in the playoffs, and wow, you know, we're that good, you know. And then you see them play like the Texans or like the Jaguars, and they can barely win. Or last week, I know Luck wasn't there, but they barely beat the Browns, and you're like, no one should ever barely beat the Browns. That should never be like a – and maybe we'll put that on a there's just like these weird stories where people hate. Like people in Indianapolis are really mad at – we like put we put like where we lost the AFC Championship. We put that on a banner and we hung it up into Lucas Oil Stadium. The game before, you know, we lost the game before the Super Bowl. People have a problem with that because we're like, oh yeah, we're happy about a losing culture here. Yeah, it's weird. It's a weird time to be a Colts fan. Yeah. Because a lot of people are like on the verge of not being Colts fans.
It's interesting. Yeah. Cause I mean, just 2 years removed from the AFC Championship game. Now the Colts after 3 games are, you know, last in point differential, you know, despite the win, you know, being 1-2, just like the Seahawks. But
yeah, you have the same record as you guys.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you think we're just nowhere near. We have one of the worst rosters in all of the NFL. So it's definitely. Like, what are we doing?
I mean, it's it feels like a repeat of 2011 when it was just like, once you took away Peyton Manning, there was nothing there. I mean, there was nothing there. And it was a couple of players that you'd want to keep around, but you'd replace everybody else. And even making moves like, you know, at the last minute-ish, signing Jonathan Hankins to like a $10 million deal or whatever. It's like, why? What did you think that was going to do? I mean, even if he's a good player, what was that going to do for you?
Man, I can't talk for these people. It's really bizarre. But again, I'll say it again. I think and trust me on this, Chuck Pagano and Ryan Grigson, they have problems of their own. But Jim Irsay, I mean, I just don't get him. I just don't. I think he needs to step away, take a break. And I don't think he is. I think he's all in. I think he has a lot to do with what the decisions the teams make.
Yeah. We'll give the Colts a rest here for just a second and go back to something that maybe hopefully will give you more pleasure to talk about. And I always like to know, I'm a food guy, so I always want to know, for anyone out there that's listening, maybe they're going to Indianapolis, maybe they're around the Indiana area. What are your favorite places to eat when you're back home?
Yeah, so there are like a couple of places that I like a lot. Obviously, Indianapolis is known for their shrimp cocktail at St. Elmo Steakhouse. Can you believe it?
Wow.
Yeah,
obviously.
It makes so much sense that we would be known for our shrimp cocktail. But there's a place called St. Elmo Steakhouse, and they have like this cocktail sauce that's really, really spicy, I'd say.
I
don't know. It's really good. It's good stuff. I can't talk bad about it. I just don't think in a landlocked state you can have like shrimp beer. Number one food.
Yeah, I really have a hard time wrapping my head around Indianapolis, just in terms of like, you know, so many cities I feel like, oh, I know the personality of that city a little bit. And I feel like Indianapolis gets lost in the shuffle a little bit, because the only thing that I can really think of is because a lot of those thoughts in our heads are informed by movies and TV. And all I can think of is Parks and Rec.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I guess I think what's funny about Parks and Rec is that they're not wrong. I mean, there's a lot of like I certainly haven't seen like a ton of Parks and Rec, but whenever they reference Indiana stuff, it's like, yeah, that's pretty much it. You know that. Yeah, Indianapolis is definitely changing right now. I know that. At one point, it was considered a blank canvas, but I think a lot of things are popping up, and what they were noticing was that all the young professionals were just leaving in Indiana once they had like money or their education. They're like, see ya. Why would I want to be in Indianapolis? Nothing's going on here.
Yeah.
I think that's changing. They're doing cool stuff. I know with downtown Indianapolis, they got, I know I lived in Fountain Square for a little bit when I lived there. That's an up and coming area. They have like nice little restaurants and things like that. It's kind of like Silver Lake here.
Oh, okay. That'll work for me as a reference. Nobody from Seattle, but Silver Lake is like Seattle-ish. It's hipster, so people can kind of get that.
Yeah, they're trying to get young people to stay or whatever. Other foods is I like this place called. I grew up. Mostly of these foods are just foods I grew up with that I can go back and they taste the exact same. I don't think they're amazing, and every time my wife's from Chicago, so I'm like, hey, babe, you got to try this sub from Grinders. Oh, it's so good. And she'll just eat it and be like, yeah, it was a sub. And I'm like, no, it's the best, you know? But I think it's just being homesick and like missing what foods from home. So you got Grinders. There's like a Creole place called Yats that I liked a lot. The cheeseburger from Working Man's Friend is really good, but you can only go there during lunchtime. It's not like a dinner place because the neighborhood is so rowdy that they can't stay open past like 5 p.m.
Great.
White Castle.
Oh man, White Castle is definitely like somewhere up there for. I mean, anyone on the West Coast, I believe, as just just something you can't have. It's the unicorn of fast food.
Yeah, it's not great, but it's like unique to where you just remember White Castle, and so you kind of crave it. You can buy the microwavable White Castles at grocery stores around here. I know that. So I always buy them, and my wife, she gets real mad at me because it's obviously not healthy for you to have those, but.
Right. And I mentioned sort of the how a lot of us are informed about cities that we don't grow up in and through movies and television. So I've been looking up some of the movies that were set in Indiana, and it's also I don't know. Like for me, I wish that Indianapolis and Indiana weren't the same word with a little bit more on one of them because it's like I always confuse the two.
Yeah, well, our minor league baseball team is the Indians. So Indianapolis, meaning the city of Indians. Indiana means the land of Indians. Indians. So we're the city of Indians, the land of Indians. Indians.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot of.
Indians moved to Indianapolis.
What's that?
What if the Cleveland Indians moved to Indianapolis? Then we'd have it all.
We would, absolutely. And all the teams just named, and maybe the Redskins as well. They moved to Indiana. That'd be great as well.
So maybe you do or don't know that these movies are set in Indiana, but you can give me your quick thoughts on the movie.
Sorry, you message it. Just Eagle Eye is set in Indianapolis, right?
Is that the film?
Yeah. No, they do one scene in Indianapolis, I remember. But yeah, go ahead. Give me some.
You're lucky that you were talking to someone who just happens to own Eagle Eye on Blu-ray.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, that could have went way over everyone's head.
I don't know why I own it on Blu-ray. I think Blu-rays came out at that time, so I was like, oh, an action movie. So I got that.
Maybe there's a deluxe package. You buy Blu-ray and you get Eagle Eye at the same time.
Plus, Bridget Moynihan, huge fan. So. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, classic.
Yeah. I've not seen it. I've never seen it.
I think I need to watch the whole thing. Like, I don't know if I've ever seen nothing but parts on TV, so I think I need just to sit down and watch it. Another movie that was on TV a ton. I mean, I feel like this movie was on TV all the time. You could probably guess what it is. Hoosiers.
Oh, baby. Yeah. Of course.
I mean, the Indianapolis or the Indiana movie to Indiana movies.
I think they showed it in school every year. I think that was like the best days of school. They would just show that movie.
Why is basketball so important to Indiana? And how did that all start? And can you describe for me Like you brought it up briefly earlier. Can you describe to me the way that people grow up with basketball versus other sports in Indiana?
Well, what do they say? There was like just nothing to do in Indiana, so like people played basketball.
Uh-huh.
Like way back in the day, and it was so much easier to play. You only need 5 players. I think a lot of it has to do with, we have Larry Bird who came up through IU basketball and Bob Knight.
Uh-huh.
And by the time I was born, man, IU had just won, I think like 2 in a row or something like that, two national championships close together or something like that, where
Uh-huh.
Bobby Knight was just the king and basketball ruled. And then I was so lucky to grow up with like Peyton Manning, not only Peyton Manning, but Reggie Miller, who is far and away one of the most exciting players to watch play basketball.
Oh, Reggie Miller was my first favorite NBA player, and that made the Pacers my first favorite NBA team, even before the Sonics.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I just love 3-pointers. They're so much fun to watch. And when you have a guy who nails all of them in exciting fashion and scores 11 points in 8 seconds, like that's what I want.
Yeah, that's like one of those times where you're just like, oh, this is unbelievable. Somebody with that like skill set who is in this room full of, I mean, he's giant as well, but I think what makes the 3-pointer so great is like regular looking people can make threes, like
yeah.
Steph Curry has no business being in the NBA before the 80s, but
yeah. And if it's like, outside of, or I just say alongside, or neck and neck, the best trash talker next to Gary Payton. I mean, they were right there with that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Just talking about that reminds me of growing up. There's just like this crazy story of when I was in high school. Like the high school I went to was like big into football, so we were like playing football. Remember, it had to be 2006 after the Colts won the Super Bowl, and I was at a football game, and all of a sudden there was this rumor that Peyton Manning had died in a car accident.
Wow.
And I guess like someone crashed one of his cars. And anyway, in the whole hubbub of it, I mean, we're a huge football school. And like, there was like a moment of silence, I remember, for Peyton Manning being dead. Cause no one was like checking the news, or it was just rumored. And we were still waiting on like news to break about it.
Uh-huh.
It was very bizarre. And I remember people crying, and I remember just thinking, wow, what a time to die when you're just like on top of the world. Like if Peyton Manning had died in 2006,
yeah,
we would definitely, there would be no argument who the greatest quarterback of all time was. It would have been like,
true.
Peyton Manning, he made it to the top, and then that's it. And, I just remember that story. I don't know why I brought it up, but I kept thinking about it when we're talking about like growing up with these like heroes, sport players.
Yeah. Speaking of, there was a couple more interesting movies here.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Oh yeah, no, it's fine. I
love the Hoosiers though. I love Hoosiers.
Yeah. Some would say and these movies coming out in a similar time period. A lot of people's favorite Christmas movie of all time, A Christmas Story.
Oh yeah.
Set in Indiana. And I think there's something about is there the Christmas Story house? Is that a thing?
Not that I know, but I think it was shot like in a small town north of Indianapolis. So I don't think I don't know anything about it. We have Santa Claus in Indiana.
Yeah. And also some people would say the greatest sports movie of all time, Rudy.
Yeah. I guess people can say that.
Some people would say that.
I'm just not a big Notre Dame fan.
Yeah, we haven't talked about Notre Dame at all, and I think a lot of people don't even know where Notre Dame is.
Yeah, it's in South Bend, Indiana.
Yeah, okay, a lot of people probably do know that.
There's a river in that city that bends south.
It's very ambiguous when you like growing up Notre Dame. I thought that it was in Ireland.
Oh yeah, that they just come from Ireland and just dominate.
Yeah,
or kind of dominate, I guess.
Made some sense.
It does. Yeah, I don't think I knew where Notre Dame was until in grade school when they were like, yeah. And I'm like, why is all my – is it because we're kind of Irish? I didn't even know, and we're not even kind of Irish. We just like to think that because we're Notre Dame fans or something like that.
Do you like Notre Dame fans?
Oh, no, absolutely not. I mean, I have a good friend who's a Notre Dame fan. His, like, wedding was Notre Dame themed, and I was in it. And that was enough for me, like, Notre Dame-wise. But I always had a problem with it because, like, all these Notre Dame fans never went to Notre Dame, don't know anybody who went to Notre Dame. There's a douchey kid in high school who ended up going to Notre Dame, and I'm like, that kid's a doucher. He should never. Yeah. So it just, I just don't like them. I don't like the idea. I come from very like Hoosiers is like the Hicks, and when Reggie Miller was really good and New York Knicks were really good, we would always say Hicks versus the Knicks when they like play each other. We're just known as this like blue collar. Well, it was always like every year the Colts are like the Pacers. Their thing is always like blue collar, gold swagger, like we bleed blue, just things that like we kind of like piggyback off of. We're hard workers type of situation. And nothing about Notre Dame to me I ever thought was like, oh, like except for Rudy, like I've never noticed anyone who's like, I'm going to work real hard and just get into Notre Dame. It's usually like, I'm going to work real hard and I'm going to get into St. Mary's, the school next to Notre Dame.
So it's funny because like from a lot of people, everybody outside of a certain thing, perspective, Rudy is a story of a guy who overcomes the odds to become a Notre Dame football player and achieve his dream because he's the biggest Notre Dame fan in the world. And from your perspective, it's a movie about a total asshole or a douchebag.
No, I'm just saying other than Rudy, because I know that story was like, yeah, he worked real hard and I'm sure there's kids there that this year now, but I also know that, just like in any college football, it's not so easy. Like it's not, they want talent and Rudy wasn't talent. He was just a guy who they put on the field.
Speaking of guys that we're just putting on the field, let's round it out with tonight's game or Sunday night's game. Colts and Seahawks. I know that everybody Colts fans wise is down on the team right now. We're 3 games into the season. Jacoby Brissett was not on the team a month ago, and now he's the starting quarterback because Scott Tolzien is awful. But Jacoby Brissett, not necessarily talented, but more talented. And I mean, for a guy that's 24 and figuring it out, what were your thoughts on his 2 starts so far? Like, what do you sort of think about the positives and negatives of having Brissett as your quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, he's coming around. He's definitely better than Scott Tolzien. Nobody's going to be paying the toll anytime soon. I'd say that to people every time. Like if I talk to somebody who's about to play the Colts, because they played Rams the first game of the season, I'm like, oh, Rams better be ready to pay that toll. And obviously I know that the Colts are going to just not be that great. But I don't know. His last game against the Browns, he did exceptionally well. But at the same time, you're like, let's see what happens against the Seahawks.
Yeah.
And I just like the idea that I can call somebody Kobe. And if he scores a touchdown, I'll yell Kobe.
Did you
have his name?
Did you miss Philip Dorsett?
No. I don't think no.
Nothing that was like, oh, we're losing. It was just like, oh, okay, we're using that pick we should have never used in the first place.
Yeah, it's like, okay, we got a guy who kind of he kind of did some good sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think when I think here in people from Indianapolis think that when you have Andrew Luck, it doesn't matter who's catching the ball. Even though T.Y. Hilton, I think he does a great job. Maybe he shouldn't get paid he gets paid a lot, so maybe he should be maybe a top 5 receiver, and he's not. He's up there.
What do you think of and some of these guys? Because it's like you've been watching some of these guys that have to sort of stand out more without Andrew Luck. And what do you think of some of these guys? Jack Doyle.
The Doyle factor.
Uh-huh.
I finally get to say that. That's great. Every time he scores, I'm like, well, he's from Indianapolis. And he went to, so like I grew up CYO football. So I grew up playing with him.
Oh, okay.
But I didn't play with him. I played like on another team. I think he played for like Little Flower or Holy Spirit or something like that. I played for St. Rock. But yeah, he was always around. Very nice guy. I like Jack Doyle. He's like a dude who just worked really hard.
He's a Rudy.
He's the Rudy. He's the Rudy of Indianapolis. He's a homer. So he's like the hometown hero. He gets a lot of love. He's going to have a lot of love in the future from Colts fans. Yeah, I love Jack Doyle.
What about Dante Moncrief?
I call him Moncrief,
Okay.
but I still like him. I know, but I mean, that's just what happens when your name's so close to Queef. I'm going to say it. But yeah, he's cool. Whatever. It shows you with Brissett and Tolzien how really good of a wide receiver he is without Luck.
What about the one of the best, like I think in terms of if you're looking for trivia questions or interesting factoids, one of the best in the NFL to find that with, because he's been in the league since 1996, 45-year-old Adam Vinatieri.
Oh yeah, sure. He's great. He's got a couple under his belt, right? He's got like 2 Super Bowls.
2001 Patriots, 2003 Patriots, 2004 Patriots, 2006 Colts. So 4.
Oh, yeah, okay, it's 4. Great. He has 1 with the Colts. That's great. I mean, he's a clutch kicker. He's amazing. Yeah, good for him.
Yeah.
Old.
It does seem like just your dad on the team, which is interesting.
Yeah, I wonder how he responds in the locker room to these guys. I wonder if he is just like, it's past my bedtime, guys, gotta go, or I don't know.
It's interesting because like when I look at the Colts roster as I'm looking at it now, which sort of I'm looking at it on profootballreference.com, and they lay it out in terms of the starters so far. It's kind of hard to have any solid start. I mean, not hard, but it's like sometimes starters can get misnomered or whatever. But there's only 2 first-round picks that are starting for the Colts right now, and that's Anthony Costanzo at left tackle and Malik Hooker, the rookie at free safety.
Yeah.
They finally spent a good pick on a defensive player that seems like a good player. He's got 2 interceptions already. Did you have any thoughts on Malik Hooker?
Yeah, that I hope he does well. And I mean, this is for Chris Ballard. This is his audition.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot riding on him, and he wears my favorite number, so that's always good. So I like that. What? 29.
Okay. Well,
it's a weird favorite number, but I don't know why. I love that number.
And do you have any other players? Because I mean, like we said, it's not a talented roster. Do you have any other players on the roster that you really do like a lot?
Yeah, I think Jack Doyle's just my favy, and then it's just kind of hard to like any of the offensive linemen. And I do like Andrew Luck. When you see him and he's playing well, you're like, wow. But I can see why you think when you get drafted first, the only thing you can be is overrated.
Mm-hmm.
You can only be overrated.
I mean, it's interesting because when you look at the first overall picks, I think that Peyton Manning is literally the only first overall pick quarterback in history to be a first-team All-Pro and Hall of Famer. Maybe that can't not Hall of Famer because I know that I can name a couple like John Elway or whatever. But I think the only one since All-Pros or at least multiple. It's crazy. I mean, he's the only one that's really stands out as a first overall pick that lived up to the hype, and even then, people will criticize him for only winning 1 Super Bowl. Or one Super Bowl with the Colts. He won 2, but the second one, come on.
Right. The second one, what was he doing, actually? He played a really great game, actually, I think.
The Super Bowl for sure, yeah.
Because he just played it safe. And sometimes it's just what you got to do to win.
Yeah. So you're not wrong. I mean, it's tough for Andrew Luck to live up to the expectations like that, but and maybe what's better for you right now looking ahead for the Colts? they go 1-15 this year, or they go
Please.
7-9.
Yeah, please go 1-15. Get a first round, get the first like pick of the NFL draft, and then trade those picks for like a bunch of picks.
Yeah, because it's going to be a quarterback next year. For all signs point towards it being a quarterback. The Colts can. Well, they've signed Andrew Luck. They've put their thing on Andrew Luck, and rightfully so. They should try and build a roster around him and on defense, and not just the quarterback. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. That's go ahead.
But knowing the Colts, they'll get that first pick, and then they'll be like, you know what? Let's get another quarterback.
Yeah. Oh, if Jim Irsay, I mean, you do. I think we only mentioned him here at the end, but do you have a lot of faith in Chris Ballard so far?
I just don't know how much he really is taking control of the Colts. In my brain, I think Jim Irsay still controls a lot of the Colts, and I know for a fact Chuck Pagano doesn't know what he's doing, because he looks like it when he's winning, and he looks like it when he's losing. And a good sign is every time I see a good like sign of, okay, is this a good offense? Is this a good coach? Is the first set of plays.
Yeah.
You know, first time your team gets the ball. Can they march it down the field? Peyton Manning was always marching it down the field, always scoring first. Now you see Chuck Pagano, and I'm just like, I see these plays. I'm like, what are you doing? What on earth? Now, I'm going to mention this because I don't think a lot of people say this, but, you know, he did have leukemia. And he has a lot of symptoms that come from what doctors call chemo brain. And I think a lot of people ignore that. And I think that we don't recognize how big of a toll like having leukemia and having chemotherapy, how big of a toll that was on him.
Is that something is chemo brain a controversial after effect?
I don't think it's controversial. I think it's just a known after effect that.
So it's not controversial that it exists. Like, people know that it exists.
No, people know it exists. People know that you have. I mean, it's sad, but he sits with that. You know, a couple weeks ago, after the Rams loss, he called the Rams the 49ers, like things like that, where you're just like, dude, do you know where you are? Like, do you know who you're playing? And because he's such a nice guy, I think that, you know, when he comes back, you don't say, hey, we got a good coach. We got to let you go, guy who just had cancer. We have to let this Bruce Arians, who obviously did a better job than you, step in. He took us to the playoffs and had an amazing season. Like, you can't say that. So we let Bruce Arians go, which he should have. And now we're like stuck with this guy who I think takes a lot of he lets a lot of control off to Jim Irsay. Sucks.
That's interesting. Is that something that Colts fans talk about, like on message boards, or is that just?
No, me and my friend do.
Okay.
And every time I talk to people about it, they certainly aren't like, I don't know, man. Because all my family members after a Colts game, they're just like, I don't care what happened to him. Irsay's got to go. You know, you're like, all right, buddy. Not very nice to say, but yeah, I think it's true. Is he an NFL coach? I don't think so. Not anymore.
Well, I think, for me, I was telling people that they should have fired Chuck Pagano after they lost the AFC Championship game, because even having gone to the playoffs those last 3 years, they had been blown out every time in the playoffs. So they had never really had a chance at winning the Super Bowl, and they were increasingly worse during the regular season. So
yeah, I look back and wonder if Deflategate saved him his job. But because, Deflategate had nothing to do with that score.
Yeah.
That deflating your balls, you can't beat a team by that much. And it only happened, the balls were only deflated in the first half, I heard. So it's like, dude, you lost the game. You got destroyed. You look like you came in and had nothing. You didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
That was a terrible game. But you're a Seahawks fan, right?
Yeah.
I hung out with Tyler Lockett once.
Yeah, he seems like a really good guy. What was the hangout?
So it was him and Trey Waynes, a cornerback for Minnesota Vikings, and they were in town training. And my friend who went to high school with Trey Waynes and Melvin Gordon, it was her birthday, and so we decided to go out. And so Tyler Lockett showed up, Trey Waynes showed up. I'm like, holy shit, it's Tyler Lockett. I didn't really know who Trey Waynes was at the time. But so we're like going out, and we get to this like bar, and there's a line, and I hear Trey Waynes, and he's like, we could just buy the club for the night. And I'm like, yeah, don't do that. Just save your money, dude. We'll go down the street to a bar or whatever. And so yeah, I sat and talked to Tyler Lockett for a little bit, and he wasn't drinking.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was drinking just water, and he was extremely nice guy. Seems like he's a really smart guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I asked the dumbest question you can ask any football player. I said, what's the hardest part about being a football player? And he just kind of looked at me and was like, getting cut? I don't know. And I was like, yeah, I'm so sorry for asking that stupid question. Because I was kind of just, I don't know. I kind of wanted to like buddy out with him, but it just never happened. But he's a really nice dude.
Yeah.
And I think good things for him if he can stay healthy.
I was a little tense there because, like, we posted an article today just about Tyler Lockett's charity work. So I was like, oh, I hope this is good. And it turned out good.
He's like such a nice guy. If you meet him in real life, I mean, he is just such a nice dude. You guys have a one of a kind, really nice football player on your team. And I wish him definitely the best for this season. I was really rooting for him at the end of last season until his injury, but
yeah.
He was really coming alive.
Yeah, we're hoping for the best, and hopefully everybody, for Sunday night football, Seahawks Colts, probably not the most exciting matchup that NBC had in mind or the NFL had in mind when they opened it up, and the excitement of Russell Wilson, Andrew Luck has been deflated for this week. Thank you, Charlie Lind, for coming on to the show. Is there anywhere that you'd like people to check you out online, with Twitter, Instagram, anything like that?
Yeah, I have a fun Twitter. At Charlie Lind, and same thing with Instagram. And on Instagram, if I can get the face swap thing, I do a Chuck Pagano impression on there that I think is funny, that people enjoy.
Definitely look for the Chuck Pagano Instagram on at Charlie Lind, and the Seahawks Colts this Sunday night on NBC at 5:30 Pacific Standard Time. And check us out on fieldgoals.com, at fieldgoals, Facebook, Twitter, whichever, and subscribe to Seaside Chats with Kenneth Arthur for more of these. Thanks to Charlie again for tuning in, and we'll be right back.